Okay, welcome VC community, video community, vinyl community. Yep, it's John back here with a new video, and this is going to be my second video on my music magazine show. But because we're approaching the end of the year, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to make it predominantly about the best music of this year, released this year, that I've come across. And I've been working furiously over the last week or so, trying to increase the number of albums that were released this year that I'd listened to, which, and considering there are literally hundreds to choose from, has been a task in itself, an enjoyable one, I have to add. And to start with, I'm going to first of all do a thank you to the three sources that I have to say I used to considerable extent, so I could see listen to some more music. And I'm going to refer to them. They'll be in the description at the bottom, links to their channels. They are not aware that I'm doing this, but I'm sure they'll be quite grateful. The first one, Norman Maslow, I listened to his best of the year, and I must admit I did jot down quite a few. There were a few that I'd already chosen, but I was very impressed with his selection. The second one is a channel called Deep Cuts, a young English man. I'm calling him young, he's probably in his 30s, and he is a brilliant reviewer of new material, new albums. His use of vocabulary is especially impressive, and he really does know how to give a convincing review. But the vast majority of the music that he put in his top 30, I believe, I'd never heard of. They're all new bands from the last few years, and an area that I'm very weak in, I must admit, showing my age really at 66. And the third one, one that you might have come across, an American reviewer called Anthony Panatano, whose channel is called The Needle Drop, and he once again is very impressive in his review of material, most of which is new, cuts right across the genres, but he's got a particular like for hip hop and sort of R&B and indie music. But I'm very impressed with him. Once again, his vocabulary use is superb, and so these youngsters can certainly teach me a thing or two. So here goes, and I've got my notes here, you can possibly see them. In no particular order, I'm going to start off with a band called Perfect Genius. The album is Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. This is a very sort of modern sort of synth type of music, quite haunting, quite indie rock style with a lot of synthesizer, but I did like it, and I got this one from Deep Cuts. Next up, a young woman who I've liked for some time. She's got a new album out this year called Liana La Havas. She's basically an R&B soul singer, but she's a bit different. She's based in the UK, and her music is much more challenging, not your predictable sort of pop R&B song. Very interesting, and her new album is certainly appealing. Next up, an old band from the beginning of the millennium, and I caught sight of their latest offering, which is the first for over a decade, Travis, and it's called 10 Songs. And certainly it's in the Coldplay bag, very well put together, very nice material, easy to listen to with quality. Moving on, All the Time by Jessie Lancer. I picked this up off one of those best of videos that I referred to, and this is a real instantly enjoyable synth type pop that she puts together mainly on her own with the computer, and it's instantly likable. Now I'm moving on to one of the greatest musicians, possibly the greatest musician that has existed in my lifetime, and that's the latest album from Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, McCartney 3. I listened to this the other day, and it's instantly appealing. Some very, very nice tracks. The one that particularly caught my ear was Lavatory Lil, which is a bit of a rocker, but it's a mix of ballad, rock, and also an interesting opener, which is an instrumental played on acoustic guitar. Next up, I've got Imelda, the album's called Hannah, and I really did like this album. She's a sort of an acoustic guitarist, very much in the sort of what I would call soft alt rock mould. Very, very interesting voice as well. Very appealing. In fact, the acoustic guitar females have caught my eye this year. Moving on. I don't want to make this too long, but has a habit of moving on. Next up, Jeff Tweedy of Wilco. His new album is called Love is the King. I'm really getting into American country, Americana style music, and this fits the bill perfectly. Jeff Tweedy. John Legend, Bigger Love. I've always had a lot of time for this artist, although I've never really listened to him. He's clearly a talent, a great songwriter, a great pianist, and he intermingles R&B soul with hip hop. This album is probably no better or no worse than his others, but I got to listen to it and I liked it. Next up, this was voted the album of the year by the one of those, the Needle Drop, and it caught me by surprise until I listened to it. It's called Where's Your Pleasure, and it's by a British female, young female, an R&B singer called Jessie Ware. And I put this on, and you immediately felt like you were in a disco, you were dancing, you'd had a few drinks, you were feeling great. Her voice is beautiful, the production is absolutely terrific, and even if you're not a fan of this type of genre, this sort of disco, sort of pop R&B style, I think you'll be very impressed with it. It's a wonderful piece of work. Next up, Lucinda Williams from the deep south of the United States. I've always had a passion for her music. On occasion, Car Wheels on a Gravel Road I got into some 2 decades ago. Her latest, Good Souls and Better Angels. She knows what she's good at, and this is once again a mix of sort of bluesy, sort of southern country style, and she doesn't miss a beat. Great voice as well. Next, the Fleet Foxes. Their latest is called Shore. Beautiful music by a very pretty band. They make sort of updated, sort of folky rock stuff with lots of arrangements, and have been described as an updated Crosby, Stills and Nash. They're not quite in that league, but they're very pleasant. This one caught me by a surprise. An old favourite of mine back in the 70s, Blue Oyster Cult, and their latest is called The Symbol Remains. I think they've lost one or two original members, deceased. But this is an absolutely really good album by a band who were superb and sort of went off the media scene. But if this is where they're leading to, I'm going to get back into them. Next up, another band from the beginning of the millennium, and I listened to this band a lot, Smashing Pumpkins, and their sort of grunge rock style coupled with heavily influenced Beatles ballad songs really was impressive. Their new one is called Sigh, that's C-Y-E, and of course Billy Corgan is still running the band. He's got Chamberlain back in on this, on drums, and also Iha, who was the guitar player. It's very synth-based rock, but it really is quite impressive. I'm trying to hurry this along. Grae, spelled G-R-A-E, by an artist I haven't known about, Moses Sumney. This is African-American hip-hop soul, and very good it is too. Next, this one hit me as soon as I listened to it. Phoebe Bridges, it's called Punisher. It's once again that sort of singer-songwriter, acoustic, sort of soft rock bag, but a really nice voice and some really nice songs. Next up, Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. I listened to this when it came out, and it certainly had an impact. It's a different style, really, of music to get your teeth into. But I first heard this woman when I looked up what the soundtrack to a drama series, The Affair, was, and she was the singer responsible for that drama theme. And this is a very strong album. Certainly, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. I'm now getting near the end. So I've got about 10 more to go, if you could just bear with me. Next one, a very interesting one that caught my eye, Toots and the Maytals. Toots is a reggae artist from Jamaica. This band emerged in the late 60s, so they've had a hell of a ride, and he's got a new one out, Got to Be Tough, and it's reggae, of course, but it's really polished. Little Green Girls, I can't remember the track now. Three Little Birds is a track that reminds you of another reggae song, and it's certainly very powerful reggae. And up next, well, I suppose I had to put this one in. It's the new album by Bob Dylan called Rough and Rowdy Ways. I listened to it the other night. I don't really get on with Dylan that much. I still can't cope with his vocal style, but I really did enjoy this. A lot of the songs are quite long, and the sound is very much a Dylan sound, but I enjoyed it on first listen. Fate Prophets, the first track, caught my ear. Next up, I did a video for this on my channel a few weeks ago, Heavy Lights by the US Girls. This is basically a sort of R&B soul type of singer with her group, but mixes in with some different sort of styles. Very interesting. Earth to Dora. This is the new album by Eels, Mark E. Everett, if you are familiar with them. He's a tremendously talented multi-instrumentalist and singer-songwriter. He really does create some very interesting sounds. It's alt rock for sure, but he knows how to put together orchestration and strings, and I always find his music interesting. It's a bit gloomy though. Up next, Storm Damage by Ben Watt. Ben Watt was half of Everything But the Girl. He's been making solo albums now for almost 15 years, and this is a very strong one. He hasn't got the guitarist who swayed with him this time, Bernard Butler, but it's still very nice music. Next up, New York alt rock, and it's brisk. It's called The New Abnormal, and it's by The Strokes. I did a review of their album Angles a few months back. I've always liked this band. They really do kick ass, and it is alt music from New York City, but they've always got attitude, and I really like it. Right, we're getting really near the end now. I bet you're probably guessing who's going to hit the top spots. As I say, I haven't really ranked any of these, but we're now at 5 from the end, and I suppose this probably would be the number 5. It's called The Universal Want, and it's by a band called Doves. This band have been around for a long, long time, but they haven't made many albums. They've only made in total 5, and I think this is the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is the 5th. Their first album was released at the turn of the millennium. Every album has been 5-star. They're very much a guitar keyboard rock band, new wave style, but very complex, but very accessible. Lovely guitar sound on this, and they're from Manchester. And now we're up to number 4, and this is another of those singer-songwriter folk country rock stars that I was referring to earlier. Jaroscz. I don't know if I got the pronunciation there. Jaroscz. She's got a new album called World on the Ground. It's absolutely beautiful. She's a great singer. The songs are deep. They're very well written. They have stories. And it's just a nice thing to have on while you're sort of reminiscing and relaxing. So check that one out. And now to the 3 absolute mega artists from my world, my age group, so to speak. These are all old guys like me, so probably no surprises that I've sort of gone back home to when I reached the summit here. And well, really, I'm going to do it in a second. So these last 3, the first one is the new album by Elvis Costello called Hey Clockwise. I've only listened to it a couple of times, but I know instantly that I'm going to like it. Costello is one of my all-time favourites. I'm not that familiar with the names of the tracks yet. There's just been too much music around, new music for me to look at. But it's got the new single was No Flag, which instantly likeable. And I suggest you get to listen to it. So the penultimate now, number 2, and I have played this a lot. It's the latest album by Paul Weller called On Sunset. I've just completed a full video on this album. It is an absolute gem. I love Paul Weller. I think he's an artist that is constantly evolving, constantly changing his delivery, adding to, not subtracting from his work with the Jam and the Style Council. This is a very, very progressive album, and for this time, and of course he's getting on a bit now. He's 64. Check it out, On Sunset. So, number 1, well, it's Bruce Springsteen, Letter to You. I can't stop playing this. It arrived and I listened to it the first time, and then I put it on again, and I've got it in the car most days, and the tracks, it's taking me right back to 1978, Darkness on the Edge of Town. A lot of the songs would have embellished that album, They're terrific, these songs. It's virtually a live in the studio album with the E Street Band. Just a shame that Clarence Clemens and Danny Federici aren't there to lap it up as well. The man can do no wrong. Although some of the albums since the millennium I have struggled with. They've always had great tracks on them, but they've had too much filler. But this one's got no filler. It's the usual type of songs about religion, about falling in love, about injustice, about the working man. But he's just unbelievably talented. And so that's my number one for 2020. Letter to You by Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Okay, I'm about to wrap this one up. I just want to mention two things at the end of this. I recommended on the first magazine show audio books, and I recommended two. I've got another one for you that I've started to read now, and it's called Life, and it's the autobiography, call it what you will, of one Keith Richards, who, if you don't know him or you haven't been alive, it's an absolute tremendous piece of work with Keith telling us his life story from the early days when he was a toddler. He was born in 1943, so we get a taste of the Second World War and his family, and how I've just got to the point where he's just met Mick in the Dartford railway station, and he isn't reciting the audio book, but I've got a link for it. It's a bit more difficult to get hold of in its entirety, and it's a solid 20 odd hours, but it's absolutely fantastic. Finally, so the final part of this magazine show, number 2, is I just want to tip my hat to a number of great musicians that haven't made it, unfortunately. This is my in memorial. I won't talk too long about them, but let's go through them. Andy Gill first, Gang of Four. He died early in the year. They made some great music. Is This Love? Bill Withers. I wasn't a great fan of Bill, but he did turn out some nice songs. Dave Greenfield, the keyboard player with the Stranglers, he passed on, age 71. Then the absolutely tremendous Little Richard, 87. What would we be without Little Richard's rock and roll? He passed on. And I noticed the other day Phil May, the lead singer with the Pretty Things, a band that I absolutely adored, particularly the late 60s offerings of SF Sorrow and the Parachute that followed. He passed away. World music, I had a great liking for Mori Kante, a Guinean musician, and he regrettably died. Just click on Yeah 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 on YouTube. Absolutely hypnotic African beat. Judy Deeble, she passed away. She was the first singer with the folk rock band Fairport Convention, and ironically I'm reviewing their first album. Leslie West, for a time I was pretty into Mountain because I was into heavy rock trios following Cream. He's gone. Ken Hensley, he played with Uriah Heep. I don't know much about them, but I thought I'd make a note of him. Eddie Van Halen, of course. Again, I wasn't too familiar with Eddie's work. If any fans out there are listening to this, just jot down the album of Van Halen that I ought to really tune into. And then Helen Reddy, her famous song that was on Saturday Night Fever, I believe, I Am a Woman, Australian girl. And finally, Peter Green, the founder of Fleetwood Mac, played with John Mayall, of course, then decided to do some grave digging, and then came back with his own band, the Splinter Group. He passed away as well. So that's my lot. I hope you enjoyed it. Comments, please get into the comments, and do use those links. It took some time to get them down. I'd like you to have a taste of what I consider to be music worth listening to in 2020.